Hi, Jenny.
Oh, can you hear me?
I can indeed, yes.
God, how genius. God, I'm so excited.
Oh, good.
Actually done it.
Yeah, it's always
Michael.
a minefield, isn't it, technology?
Oh, I hate it. You're sideways.
I've got you sideways, so I don't know if you, yeah, if you just turn 90 degrees. Ah, there we go.
Okay. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, yes.
Good, good, good. I'm just so excited that I actually got the sound. When we had a Zoom meeting for Boom Radio
Hmm.
on Thursday, it took me forever. They could see me, but I couldn't hear, or they couldn't hear me, and it went on and on. Oh, Mike Smith, he's on. He says,
Hello, dear.
"Hi, gorgeous.
How are you, sweetie?
I'm extremely well. How lovely to see you.
I love to see you. Yeah.
Go on, tell me what the weather's like."
It's actually sunny. Would you believe?
Thank you.
And you?
No,
What?
I can't see any decorations. Christmas.
No, not yet. Anyway, also I'm in the study, so we don't have them up here. I don't see any with you either. Let me put my glasses on so I can see better. There we go. That's better. Oh, there. That's lovely. Yeah. But I have to put up a whole 6 foot bloody great thing, and all because with the granddaughter expects it.
Oh, how lovely. How old is granddaughter?
This is my American granddaughter, 9. She's 9.
Oh, lovely. I've got a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old coming
Oh,
to stay with me over Christmas.
exciting!
That's going
My
to be
other
great.
one, my English grandchildren drive me around. I mean, they're all adults. Yeah,
My
yeah,
goodness.
yeah. They're in their 20s now. My English grandchildren, but this is the American one.
Oh,
How are you doing?
how
Where are you living now, Jenny? Don't tell me your address, but where are you now?
Hastings.
Hastings.
Pretty much Hastings.
Lovely,
Yeah,
very nice.
pretty much. It's lovely. And to
Mm.
take the little ones, I've got a
Yeah,
9-year-old, no, 10-year-old and a 12-year-old down here as well. And
mm-hmm.
then the other two live further away, so that's why they're
Right,
coming today. So
right.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it's great. I'm looking forward to it. I really am.
Yeah, these are fun things to do. I mean, I watched it. Oddly enough, I actually only watched the episode this morning, just before this. Just to sort of remind me of it all.
Yes. Gosh, it
Yeah.
seems a long time ago.
Well, it was a long time ago. That was 1978. It was a
No, it
very, very long
seems a long time ago.
time.
What are you doing?
Just bugger all, really. I just living. I don't really do much these days. I'm sort of involuntarily. Ah, that's one of them, isn't it? There it is.
Yeah, I
Yes.
want more. I want more.
Well, my publisher, we stopped at 5. There are 5 of them altogether.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
Brilliant.
yeah.
I haven't caught up then. That's me bad.
No,
My
no,
bad.
no. That's right. That's right. Also, that's not the first one. That's like number
No, it's
3.
number 2. Was it number 3?
I think it's number 3. Yeah, I think.
The other thing
Yes,
I
it's
love is
number.
the fact, yes, it is number 3. You're right. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
I love the big printing as well.
Yeah.
Because once you get other hands on there following
Yeah.
it, because as you well know, with the fingers going through.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Bless them. Bless them.
Yeah.
What
No, I was
about
watching and I was thinking, oh, poor Jenny, she didn't get to come to the south of France with Lawrence and me.
no,
No.
Oh,
no.
bad. Yeah, never
Was
mind.
that was that the Camargue?
Yes. And we
Yeah,
shot quite a lot of stuff there. In fact, so that would have meant I was working it out. That would have meant that it was one of the very earliest episodes shot, but then we came back to England to do all the English sequences. You see, so it was
yeah.
split. So by the time I got back, I would have to remind myself what the story was about because there would have been a long gap between. In fact, you can tell my hairstyle. My hair is slightly shorter, I think, in England than it was or slightly longer somewhere. I don't know. Yeah.
I think it's longer in the English stuff. Yeah.
Hello, Philip.
Yeah.
Hi, hello.
Are you okay?
Hi. Thank you for sending me the link again. I don't know what happened to the old one. But I got in a panic. I couldn't find it all of a sudden this morning.
Yeah. Sometimes they don't seem to go through. Sometimes, so it's...
No. I'm sure you sent it, and I probably deleted it like an idiot.
Sorry, we wouldn't be the first to do that.
No.
Not at all. Yeah, it's bitterly cold in the UK at the moment. I think it's -3 this morning.
Is it? Oh gosh, poor you. Oh well,
I don't like that sneer, that smile.
No. Listen. We were there in the summer. The whole family. We came all over. We took an Airbnb just outside Henley. It was lovely.
Oh,
Gorgeous
lovely.
weather we had. It was perfect.
Did you see Sam?
Yeah.
Good. Oh,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
well
we were just down the road from Sam and Lucy, so we went up there quite a lot. And the granddaughter completely fell in love with Sam and Lucy and the farm and the goats and the pigs and the horses and everything. Yeah.
The kitchen I lust after. Well,
Yes,
and you and Sam, but the kitchen is great.
it's one. I know. One longed for a kitchen like that.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
Yes.
All
So are you
right.
coming back to Henley maybe this summer?
I don't know. Next summer? Yes, probably. I try and come over every year.
Yeah.
I try, but it just gets harder and harder, really. Mind you, if we're all the family are thinking that if this election turns out as badly as people are predicting it might, we all might come over and might immigrate back to England again.
It's not that good here, let me tell you.
Well, except that there's I don't know. I mean, it's better, guys. It's better.
Is it really down to just two choices?
Yeah.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Hello, there's Mike. Mike's online. I see. Hello, Mike. I know I can't hear you, but hello, Mike.
Okay. I'm just making sure everyone's been able to log on okay, and then we'll make a start shortly.
Yeah, we've got a couple of minutes, haven't we? Well, 1 minute. Yeah.
1 minute. Yeah. Everyone seems to be all right. Yeah.
Well, here's to a good evening.
Indeed. Yeah. Yes.
Crack of dawn morning for me, Jenny.
I could pretend it's orange juice. It's not. What time is it?
It's 11 o'clock in the morning.
Oh wow. Yeah. Time for 11s.
Yeah, time for 11s.
Okay, so I think everyone's logged on that will be logging on. So thank you to everybody that's joined us for this event, and to Ian and Jenny. It is very much appreciated for you spending the time with us today. For those that want to watch the episode along, we're just going to pause on the opening shot of the episode, which is just a shot of the cars on London Street. So we just want to take a couple of moments just to get the episode ready and pause on that opening shot. If you don't have the episode, don't worry. It'll just be sort of a kind of a general chat anyway. So it's more there as a springboard for certain things. So it works either way. So if everyone wants to get ready, we'll start in about 30 seconds time. Okay, just final checks. I think everyone's on. Okay, I'll do that. I'll count down for 5 and then we'll press play. Okay, so 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, play. So my first question is for Jenny. How did you get involved in this episode? Do you recall?
No, only we had a pause, as we did every summer with Magpie, the children's program that I was doing. And we had about 6 weeks off every summer. And my agent suddenly said, do you want to do a Return of the Saint? Because they've asked for you. And I thought, yeah, and how? So I was there pretty quick.
I suppose, like most people, you'd seen the Roger Moore series and you were very much aware of the Saint.
I was very much aware of Roger Moore, who my grandparents are to blame for the photographs on the knitting patterns. They were professional photographers, and my mother was a great friend of his and used to share driving up to London from Welwyn Garden City. So I knew Sir Roger quite well. And I would love to have met Ian. So yes, I was there like a shot.
And of course, the episode opens with you and Ian in the Jaguar. Was the Jaguar fun to drive in, both of you?
Now, Ian never let me drive the Jaguar. He'd probably say something like it wasn't in the script. But Mike Smith, Mike Smith, who bought it, was wonderful in that Françoise Pascal is a great friend of mine and has been for many, many years. And she sorted out taking me to Rules for my 60th birthday party.
Mm-hmm.
And Mike was there. And after we'd had our lovely dinner, I went outside and Mike had the car, your car, Ian, and drove me all the way home. It was the most wonderful present and the beginning of a very good friendship. It was lovely.
Were you fond of the Jag, Ian?
Yes, I was. Yes, it was a home away from home. Really, it was lovely. I mean, it was a nice car, I would say, you know. And but it was a prototype in a way. And well, Mike Smith will argue with this. Of course, it probably wasn't really a prototype. It was just a very early model, and things were inclined to go wrong occasionally. I mean, if you had the air conditioning on, and you took a hard left, icy cold water would spill all over your feet. And I don't know what it was. But it was a wonderful car. It was great fun to drive. And yes, I did a lot of the driving of it, of course. Yeah.
It was your parking I was worried about. Half
The what?
on the pavement, half off. I mean,
yeah, that was dreadful parking, wasn't it? Yeah. I always used to tell, I don't know if I did this to you, Jenny, but you know, I was very short-sighted in those days. I had to wear glasses, and of course I couldn't wear glasses to drive the car. It was all before contact lenses, really. And so right in the middle of driving quite fast, I would quite often turn to my co-star who would be sitting this side. By the way, I said, I can't actually see anything at all. Do tell me if something's coming this way, won't you? And it was just one of my little silly jokes. You know.
I thought it was to make us look more scared. You know,
No, just
mind you, my mother, Dinah Sheridan, did a film called Genevieve, and she was in the car with John Gregson, and he couldn't drive, let alone see. So
that's
it's the
even
same
better
sort
story.
of. No, it's the same feeling.
I should mention the doctor in the beginning of the scene. He's played by Anton Phillips, who appeared in Space 1999 and other sort of TV roles. He's still around. I particularly like, Ian, how you deliver your introduction to before the halo comes up. My name's Templar, Simon Templar. So of course it's a bit of a sort of a Bond-esque sort of reference to that. Do you feel that the Bond character is quite similar to the Saint in some respects? It sort of has that sort of, that's part of the appeal. It's sort of that kind of sort of cut from the same cloth.
I think they're interchangeable, to be honest with you. I mean, I've said this before, and those people who are watching today will know. Oh God, he's repeating himself. But you know, those sorts of characters are really what you make of them. They don't really have much character of their own. It's really what the actor brings to it. You know, what Roger brought to it, and you know, it's But the Saint and James Bond, yes, I mean they're cut from the same cloth, aren't they? Really.
I think, if I may interject here, I think, Ian, you brought more gravitas to your Saint in that you were very conscientious about the script and about your lines. And there were some scenes where you took great care in what your character was going to say and how he was going to say it, which was admirable.
Oh, thank you. Well, you know, some of the scripts were hastily put together, and I quite often had something to say about the quality of it all. I didn't care for some of the stuff, and I would do little tweaks here and there, little changes and things. But I always said to the actors I was working with, the cue will be the same and the length of the speech will be the same, but I might shift around with it inside it because some of it is a bit corny, to be honest with you, you know. And so I would do that a bit, you know.
Because this, of course, written by John Cruise, who did 10 episodes of the series, and I'd imagine with John's scripts, there would probably be less changes perhaps than some of the other writers.
Definitely, John. I have to say that I think this one, compared with the last episode we watched, this one I think is actually quite a good episode. Really, I mean, I think the writing's quite tight. There's some quite good jokes in it, and I like the story. The story is fun, isn't it? Really, I mean, it makes a change, doesn't it? That I'm not rescuing some poor girl. I'm actually in cahoots with an old general. I think that's quite an original thought, really. I mean, Jenny does not need rescuing at all. She's perfectly self-sufficient, and the general and I go off and do our bit. So it's slightly different in that sense, isn't it?
And we must talk about Lawrence Naismith. Watching the cafe sequence, he's just like a sort of a man on a mission, trying to find out what's happened, and he's a very sort of physical role as well. You know, he's grabbing people and he's throwing punches and he's running and chasing. So, you know, what do you guys remember about Lawrence?
He played my father more than once, but in The Poppy Chain, he was extraordinarily physical. I mean, his running and he loved that bit in France with you, Ian, where you were dashing about with guns and falling on the floor, and I mean, he was great.
He was. Yeah, I can tell it's a very, very early episode because we had guns and we shot guns. In later episodes, all that was thrown out. We weren't allowed guns anymore. It was one of the very rare episodes where we actually let bullets fly, and that's what I remember that being a lot of. I thought, oh, this is going to be like this all the time. We're always going to have submachine guns. Great. No, we weren't allowed them after a while. But that episode, this is one of the reasons I like the episode, really.
Yeah, it's very sort of action orientated, and it's perhaps more indicative of perhaps Roger Moore's Saint in terms of its hardness. The boyfriend is played by Kim Fortune, who people might recognise from The Spy Who Loved Me and Moonraker in sort of bit parts. Do either of you remember Kim at all?
It's so long ago, and I hope he's not watching, but I don't. No.
Jenny?
I remember thinking how talented he was. He had that scene sort of in the corridor on the stairs by the flat, and he really went for it. And I mean, it was difficult because physically it was difficult with lots of people all around and all crowded in and cramped in, and he suddenly went for it, and he was admirable.
I agree. Yeah, he was terrific. He was terrific. Yeah.
And you do use the Elstree Studios quite a bit in this one in terms of the cafe exterior is Elstree. I think the warehouse sequence later is just an empty soundstage. So I take you kind of used every chance you got, really, something that was kind of fairly easy to dress or nothing at all.
I think it saved money on the budget, you know. I mean, to use the studios where we were already ensconced, it was always a good idea, and yeah.
Jenny, I wanted to ask, because you've been in a few sort of cult shows, so The Persuaders, Department S, I think you did Softly Softly. How do those episodes, those series, compare to Return the Saint?
As Ian says, I mean, it very much is a sign of the times. Softly Softly, very much BBC, Britain, police, no guns, preferably no guns, beat each other up, you know, to a pulp by all means. And my character in the first episode I did, because I was there for over 6 years and married Harry Hawkins, my character did. And we were rolling around, or meant to be rolling around underneath horses' hooves and doing judo and that sort of thing. But no guns, no guns. Department S, there you're getting into where the American market comes into it. And I think that makes certainly police type shows very different indeed, because the American perception of a baddie is different from our perception, certainly if you go back to the 70s.
We're now at the Barbican Centre. Was it quite it's early morning Sundays in London? Was it quite nice to shoot in London at that time?
No.
Well, it was.
No?
At least it was, but you were right. But it wasn't very crowded. The good thing about the Barbican was that in that area it was quite empty of people. It was quite a good location from that point of view.
Yeah, but it was grey. It was wet. It was concrete. It was up and down stairs.
It's not that much glamorous. It's not that much glamorous. More glamorous now, is it? Really? It's very much sort of not. It's a bit like the National Theatre, isn't it? It's all very sort of that of that time and a bit sort of not very pleasant to look at.
Yeah.
Concrete. It's a nice place to live now, but certainly then it was very mundane. It was very concrete and clay and functional.
Yeah, functional is a good description of it. We have actor Paul Gregory as the innocent businessman in this scene. Do you either remember Paul or looking at the episode now? Did you think his performance was good?
Yes, I thought it was very good. Yeah, I thought it was very good. I mean, again, I don't remember that sequence simply because literally it probably took all of an hour to shoot that, almost maybe an hour and a half to shoot that whole sequence probably. And we were up on this thing and, it was his role, it was his bit really. Yeah, it's gone from my memory. My wife sometimes says, do you remember making these things? And I say, some of them, yeah, and some bits of them, but an awful lot of them, I'm surprised, oh, what am I doing there? Do you feel like that, Jenny, when you look at something as old as that, you go, how much you actually remember? It's hard, isn't it?
It's embarrassing when somebody who's seen them and remembers them remembers more than you do. The trouble is that you were so busy not just doing that scene, but trying to remember the next one and figuring out where you were in the story, because very seldom was it shot in the right order. So I think we have a reasonable excuse.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Do either of you remember Christopher Timothy, who of course plays the businessman we're all looking for? Any recollections of Christopher?
Yeah. Go on, Jenny.
I'd never met him before, and I only met him over a cup of polystyrene coffee that day. But I loved the fact that he was booked as the baddie, and my dad in the thing really went for him. But he was such a sweetie on television and everything else. So it was brilliant casting.
Yeah, I mean, he went on to become incredibly famous on All Creatures Great and Small, didn't he? And I mean, this was in his early days, I guess, and still taking relatively smallish supporting parts, and then bang, he becomes this enormous star on in All Creatures Great and Small, and he plays the vet. Yeah,
not with that hair.
Not with that hair.
No.
I just wanted to mention your accent, Ian, in this, because of course you kind of base your same accent on Cary Grant, but in this episode it seems sort of more of your own accent. Did it sort of, was it feedback that made you sort of turn it a bit, or were you just sort of playing with it a little bit as the series went on?
It was the producer, Bob Baker. I tell the story. We were in the south of France to shoot the very first episode. It is just possible. I don't remember. Maybe somebody else can tell me. It is just possible. It was this episode. This episode may have been the very first one ever shot. I have a feeling it might have been. And I'll tell you why. Because Bob Baker said to me on the night before we did our first shot of the first episode of Return of the Saint, he came to me and he said, "Oh, Ian, tomorrow when we start shooting, just remember, not too English." I had no idea what he was talking about. What? I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, not too English." And I didn't know I have no idea. And I thought, well, I don't know what to do. So I had a little bit of luck in the sense that I could play that character, the drug dealer guy, when I'm pretending to be what I'm not. I put on a slight Michael Caine accent on it. And I don't think Bob Baker liked that very much. He didn't like the idea of the Saint actually having another accent. But one episode, a few weeks later, I was doing a different episode, and I did for a joke, I did a bad Cary Grant accent. And that night, Bob Baker, who saw the dailies, the rushes that night, he came and he said, "That's it. That's the Saint." So this is why, for the rest of the time, I did a slightly odd Cary Grant accent, but not in this episode, because this episode preceded Bob's approval of my joke accent. Yeah. So that's why I think in this episode it's more me and less Cary Grant. Yeah.
We're looking at the hospital sequence after Lawrence Naismith has been knocked on the head. Of course, this is a real hospital location, and there's quite a few locations, interiors where they're actually proper houses and etc. Is it sometimes limiting to film inside places that aren't studios, so interiors that aren't studios? Is it can it be a bit difficult sometimes?
Jenny?
I remember the hospital location as being open mostly, and it was pouring with rain. And I remember it as being cold and damp and really not at all like a hospital.
So kind of sort of in disrepair, sort of abandoned sort of thing almost.
I don't know where it was. Do you remember, Ian?
No, I don't. No. No, but you know the difference between shooting in a studio with a built set and a real place, it entirely depends on the level of comfort you've got. Usually in the studio you have your dressing room and you can go off to your room in between takes. On a real location you don't usually have that, so they try and set a room aside for the actors, but quite often it's a bit scruffy and not great. It is easier shooting on sound stages. Always, everything is under control. You don't have to stop for aircraft, that kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, shooting on location is always a problem, always a difficulty. But it just looks better, doesn't it, on the whole?
Yeah.
One actor I wanted to mention here in the scene is Patrick Jordan, who plays Inspector Sullivan, that you both have a few brief moments with. He does appear in an episode of Persuaders, and he's a very good character actor. Again, any impressions of Patrick at all, or encounter him on anything else?
Again, 100 years ago. So
Yeah.
no, other than the fact that, you know, obviously it's always a pleasure to work with a true professional, and 99 times out of 100 one did, you know, on this show. People were cast for the fact that a lot of them had worked before with Bob or worked before with the director, you know, and a lot of that's the way it goes, isn't it? And the director and the producer like to cast people they know and can trust, and certainly he was one of those, you know.
You two, of course, are split up for quite a bit of the episode, and we're getting into that section where you kind of sort of start to sort of part ways. I imagine, was this the case sometimes, Jenny, with some of the roles you got, that you were kind of a bit sort of shoehorned into sort of smaller roles, or a bit sort of sidelined? Did you feel sometimes that a bit frustrating?
In all truth, at that time there were very few series that had a female lead. In fact, the only one I can think of is Shirley's World with Shirley MacLaine. That I think it was done at Pinewood. But mostly, you know, the girl is there as hopefully moving the story on, but generally not terribly important.
So for what it was, you feel quite happy with the role you have in this one?
I thoroughly enjoyed myself.
Good. But now looking at the scene where you're going through the warehouse and trying to find the drugs, and of course you're going through all the food containers, one of which you eat a bit of. Just got me thinking about when you have to eat on a set for scenes, and do you have to very carefully think of what you're going to eat, especially if there's lots of takes? And is there any sort of sometimes where it's been difficult for both of you?
Well, I mean, years ago, before The Saint, I did some films with a film director called Michael Reeves, who was a personal friend, and he used to do awful things to me on eating scenes. He would always put Brussels sprouts out there, which is something I can't stand. It would, yes, I suppose so. I just want to comment on that scene, how well shot it was. It was very cleverly shot, wasn't it? And you know, I want to say something. I know you're probably going to want to get on to the director later on, Philip, don't you? But Charles Crichton had been retired for some time, and Bob Baker did this a lot. He would drag older directors out of retirement, say, come on, come and do it. And Charlie Crichton was one of my favorite directors. He did about 3, I think. And it was really a pleasure to work for him. And he just knew what he was doing so well, you know.
Mm. And they'd always hire, film directors, as you said, but also very established directors. But they did sort of go in between film and TV, so that's why they're so well shot. Do you remember Charlie Crichton, Jenny?
No, not particularly. What I do remember in that scene was because the stuntmen did an awful lot of, I think some of them had not only worked on The Return of the Saint, but had worked on The Saint. And the blonde guy who was behind the lorry putting in the stuff, I mean, he did so much work, television work, on programs made at Elstree Studios.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, I say, a lot of crossover between the productions, but also the actors. A lot of people that starred in the original Saint would then come back to do this. Same with the new Avengers,
the stuntmen,
Avengers, yeah.
And much of the crew too. I mean, much of the crew came from the old show. This is why when I first came onto the set, there was a lot of raised eyebrows in a way, because it was a bit like, oh, here's the new boy, let's see what he's like. Compared to Rog, compared to good old Roger. And it took a little while. It took about 2 or 3 weeks before they were perfectly friendly. Don't get me wrong. They were very sweet. But before something really nice happened. And that was one day I walked onto the set and one of the crew said, "Morning, Governor." And I walked on a little bit further and somebody else said, "Morning, Governor." And all of a sudden I was governor. And it took about 3 or 4 weeks before they decided I was the governor. And it was just respect. It was just a question of whether or not they thought, well, does this guy know what he's doing? Is he nice? Is he friendly? Is he starry? Or is he perfectly like us? He's just another guy. Does he know his job? Does he know his lines? Is he going to waste our time? All of which I managed to pass that exam. And all of a sudden I got the word governor, which was nice. Yeah.
Were the stuntmen helpful to you, or were you so au fait with fight scenes it didn't matter?
No, they were terribly helpful. I've told, I mean, dear Les Crawford, who was the leading stuntman, he taught me. I mean, I arranged the kind of fighting style I did, and he probably did that one of those stunts or several of those stunts in that show, probably. No, he was very helpful, Les Crawford. Yeah, mad as a box of frogs, but very helpful. Yeah.
What are your memories of Les Crawford, Jenny?
Well, again, I mean, as Ian says there, they would turn up on so many different shows, and they were wonderful. They were very much part of British television. I mean, it wasn't just the stars, but it was also the stuntmen who were extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary.
And they were quite famous as well, a lot of them. Rocky Taylor, Bill Weston, they were well known. And people look forward to. They also, a lot of the times, were good enough so they could play small roles as well. They weren't just, they got employed as that was the fun part for them, when they actually got to play something as well, and then be also the stunt, be able to do the stunt.
Some of them were in the 1969 filming of On Her Majesty's Secret Service. And that's how I got to know them as well. And I mean, we were up on that mountain for 6 weeks or more. Yeah. So we got to know them quite well.
Yeah, I bet.
I think there's a lovely photograph of you, Jenny, with George Lane Cooper, the stuntman, and also Bernard Hoffel as well. I saw
yes.
recently.
He would do press-ups with me sat on his shoulders, cross-legged.
Right.
And he would do press-ups up on the mountain. This is 4 cable cars up, so the air is fairly thin anyway, but he needed to pump his muscles up. And he got me to sit across the back of his shoulders as he did press-ups. That's dedication.
So a gentle giant and a nice man?
Oh, all of them were gentle giants. Because if they couldn't teach us, the actors, how to do the scenes, and they got hurt, they couldn't earn their living. So it was very serious stuff. I mean, yes, you do it with a smile, but it's very serious stuff. I mean, Ian did some very complicated fights.
Mike has just mentioned that it was stuntman Chris Webb who was in the lorry in the warehouse sequence, and apparently he just died this week. Didn't know that.
Oh,
Oh dear. No.
So that was the person that you were both recalling.
Yeah. The only bit of advice I was ever given, and I pass it on to anybody else, is never, ever, ever play poker with stuntmen. Ever. They will beat you. They're just better at it. That's all there is to it.
You have a nice scene at the airport, Ian, with Gary Waldhorn, who people might know from Vicar of Dibley. Do you remember Gary at all?
He's lovely. He was very well known even then, Gary. You know, he never stopped working. Yeah, I think he was rather wasted in that part. I thought he could have done so much more. I mean, they could have given him a lot more. But yes, he was again consummate professional and knew what he was doing. Nice man. Oh, yeah.
Did you ever encounter Gary, Jenny?
no, I don't think so.
No. But you say a really well-known actor and somebody that kind of became the part of furniture in the British audiences. I was just struck when I watched the airport scene how minimalist the security was. You just sort of patted down, your bag was checked, and that was kind of it. I think sometimes when modern audiences watch these programs, it seems like life was almost a bit simpler, less complicated back then, which might be part of the appeal of these shows. Was it a simpler, better kind of way of life?
I'm not sure it was simpler, but I'm old enough to remember the fact that the first planes I ever went on to go to France or something were propeller planes. They weren't jets at all. And I remember when the first jet came out, it was called the Comet. It was a very beautiful plane, British Comet, and it was the first commercial jet. And I think altogether life going in airports was very simple. As you say, that scene, you can see that there is no security. You just got on the plane, and for some reason we got patted down. That didn't usually happen at all. So I can understand why they do it now. But yes, it was simpler and it was easier. And yeah.
But if you think about it, far, far fewer people ever flew on a plane.
Yeah, right. It's true. Yeah. The airports were not crowded particularly, and
No.
yeah.
So I think perhaps a sense there's a bit more opportunity, perhaps, and that there wasn't so many people competing for resources, and I suppose as an actor now you've got all streaming services and so many other sort of productions. But then I suppose it was a bit more basic, but you didn't necessarily have to go to drama school, or you didn't have necessarily trained to be a director. You could do it in an easier sort of way, I think.
Yeah.
I wanted to mention, Ian, now into the French section of the episode, and when this is where your Michael Caine impression comes in, and I think this was pretty much almost your first day, wasn't it? I think on the series.
I think it was, it really was. It's hard to say, but somebody else will know this. But I think it really was either the very first episode we shot, those French sequences, or it was really early on. Yeah.
From my understanding, the French sequences are pretty much sort of almost sort of day one. I suppose.
So I quite like the scene. I mean, I was watching it again this morning, and I thought actually that's not bad. All that stuff, it's a bit corny, but it's not bad, that little scene, and I quite like the sort of cheerful jolliness of it, the relaxed quality to it. Really, it's rather nice, I thought. Well,
and having the children around too.
Yes, in the farmyard. You mean there's little kids running around, the family. Yeah, it's very Godfatherish, wasn't it, in that sense? Wasn't
it?
Yes,
very.
But then this is years before the Godfather, guys. Everybody watching, remember that. Years before the Godfather.
When was the first Godfather? Was it 70? I want to say 74.
Was it? Then I'm wrong. Was it really? Of course, you're right. It wasn't years before the Godfather, was it? Yeah. Maybe we were imitating the Godfather rather than the other way around. That's probably the answer, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, I suppose even the Godfather probably copied things from you know,
Yeah, from something else. Yeah.
somewhere. The idea of the original idea and all that. As well on the subject of accents, have either of you been needed to do a certain accent for a while and like really struggled with it, or do you quite like the challenge of doing an accent?
I did.
Well,
Ian,
go on.
go. No, you
No,
go.
all right, I'll go. Well, I live in America now, and I have lived here for 30 years, and I have played very occasionally American parts but I don't like it because I'm surrounded by American actors, and I always think they're going to laugh at me. But there was one producer who produced a series called Diagnosis Murder with Dick Van Dyke, and I did several episodes for him because he was a bit of a fan, the producer, very nice guy. And as a joke, he always made me play American. When I did, for instance, Murder, She Wrote with Angela Lansbury, I did about 5 or 6 of those. I was always English in it. But for Diagnosis Murder, he made me play American just because it made him laugh. And I kind of got away with it. I was very East Coast, very Ivy League kind of American. But I'm not good at accents. Jenny, are you any good at them? I'm terrible at them.
I love accents. And I did a Bolting Brothers film where we all had to have French accents. And that's where I made friends originally with Françoise Pascal, who you may notice by the name.
Actually is,
French.
yeah.
Yes, yes. And was mightily miffed. That's underplaying it. When John said that everybody should have a franglais accent like Jenny because hers was best. Françoise was incandescent. I mean, so cross. Cannot believe it. But no, I like doing French accents. I like doing sort of West Country, that sort of thing. I've done those and got away with it, which is probably why I like it. The problem with American accents is you can do pretty much any accent because it's such a huge country. Unless they ask you where you're from, you're safe, in my estimation.
It's true that it's true that my wife said, it was American. My wife always said, it's a big country. We don't know. It sounds all right to us. As long as it sounds vaguely American, we'll accept it. So, but it wasn't so much my ability to do it. It was the fact that I was surrounded by the real thing, and I always think that's a little intimidating, that's all.
Have you ever had a voice coach on a film?
Well, apart from a drama school, no, I don't think so. On movies and things. No, it would have been a good idea, wouldn't it? Really, every now and again to have had a voice coach. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if I'd resent them.
No, any help you can give me, I'm fine with it.
The character of Scorbessi, who's of course the drug baron, Gregory Allison, Gregory Aslan.
Gregoire Aslan.
Gregoire.
Aslan.
Aslan, as in the lion. Yes.
Was he good to work with Ian?
He's lovely. Yes, he was around forever. He played every single foreigner in every single movie that's ever been made. He was immensely useful. It's wonderful being a character actor. It's much better being a character actor like that than it is being a leading man. Because as a character actor, there's so much work around. There's so much for you to do, really. And he was lovely. I think he enjoyed himself. He got to go to the south of France. Yes, I mean it was just a pleasant job for him, really. And it was the sort of part he played all the time. Really. Good guy, old Gregoire. Yes, he died shortly. He died in 1982, so not that long after we'd filmed it. Then about 3 or 4 years, I guess, afterwards.
Yeah. Just to talk about Lawrence Naismith a little bit further, he's played quite a few sort of hard-edged characters in his career. Judge Fulton, The Persuaders comes to mind. He's been in Diamonds Are Forever, the James Bond film. But he also has a playfulness in his roles as well. Some of the lines in this are particularly good. Was he a serious actor? How it was he like? What was his character like?
He was just a good chap. We got on very, very well. it's hard to say anything bad about anybody or anything good about anybody, simply because A, it was a very long time ago, and B, you know, you're with them for a very limited time. I was with Lawrence for what, 9, 10 days, probably tops, you know, and never worked with him since. But he was a very well known actor at that time. He was quite a star, old Lawrence. You know, he'd been in Jason and the Argonauts. He played the captain in probably the best Titanic film, A Night to Remember, which was, I think, a better film than Titanic. And he was the captain in that. He had a very distinguished career, old Lawrence, you know. A lovely man. I liked him very much.
And Jenny, you said you worked with him a number of times. Would you?
Yeah, he played my father, and when we started and met on Ian's Return of the Saint, I mean, the first thing he did was apologize and say, "I'm your father again, but still no mother." But love it. He had a twinkle in his eye always, and he loved the bits in that episode where he was sort of goading you and you were goading him, and the two of you were mentally and verbally tussling without touching, which was lovely. And that's the sort of thing that he loved.
Yeah, it's a great two-hander it becomes in the latter part of this episode.
Yeah.
So there is a bit of a sort of contrast in the later action sequences to the warehouse sequence, which is very much more of a slapstick fight that we see quite a few of in the series. Ian, did you prefer the more sort of realistic action that we see in the climax, or do you like a mixture of both?
Well, you know, I've commented on the fight scenes in The Saint before, and I've been nasty about them because there was very little time, and a lot of them were slightly ridiculous. But I mean, it is a little bit ridiculous at the end of this episode, isn't it? Where Lawrence Naismith and I have 2 machine guns, where we've probably used up most of the bullets. If you look at that, look how many bullets we fire in the course of it. I mean, you never see us reloading. We don't have access to fresh magazines. We come on, and there are what 15 men fully armed, and Lawrence Naismith and I say, "Drop your guns," and they all rather meekly do. That was a classic Saint stuff. I mean, we could send that up all the time. But in terms of actual physical fights, I always thought they were hurried, they were rushed. But in this episode, they were better than usual, I think. Again, that could have been down to Charlie Crichton's directing. I mean, I still think it's slightly funny that the man who slips in the warehouse scene on the slippery floor and he falls over backwards, and we assume he cracks his head because he goes to sleep, but not before lifting his head up off the concrete and looking around for a couple of seconds, then dropping back down again. Then there's the other bit where I put a barrel over a man and then I don't knock him out, rather just put a barrel over and then go and make a phone call or something, or I'll go into an office and do something else. And I look at it and I'm going, am I not a little bit concerned this man actually might get out of the barrel and come after me? No, the Saint doesn't concern himself with things like that.
And what do you think of it, Jenny? Do you quite like the sort of violence being treated in sort of a comical way, or do you like the sort of more realistic sort of? Because now
I don't think the fights in The Saint were comical. As Ian says, I think the problem is you don't have time for rehearsal when you're doing a television series. You don't have, like a feature film, weeks to sort of get to know each other, or like a play, weeks and weeks to get to know each other. You may just say, "How are you? Good morning," over a cup of coffee or in the makeup room, and then you're into it. So, you know, by necessity, it has to be pretty quick. But I don't think ever the fight scenes were ridiculous or comic. No, because that would have ruined the character of the Saint.
No, they're just comic in retrospect, I think.
Oh,
I find them. I find them slightly funny sometimes. Again, I've said this before, but you know, I'm not a massively powerful man in any way, and there I am, and this giant 8-foot guy comes at me, and I go, chop, 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 and he falls over. You know, I never really believed all that. But again, in a feature film with a big budget, a fight scene like that would have taken maybe a week to shoot. We
Yeah.
did it in half an hour. You know, there wasn't time to actually go into wonderful cuts and make it look wonderfully realistic. Also, we had to think of our target audience, which were mostly teenage, adolescent boys. You know,
Yeah.
We couldn't get too graphic with anything.
Yeah, it's very stylized. Well, in everything that's in the Saint, but the action and the violence, it's got its own sort of uniqueness in how it's approached.
Yeah.
You've both done a lot of extensive work on location. Do you guys have a one or two favorite locations you've worked with, on in your careers?
I think it's changed an awful lot, hasn't it, Ian, between the 70s and now. For instance, you actually get a room with a loo of your own, whereas in those days you were lucky if the loo was on your landing. So, I don't know, Ian.
My favorite location was Venice. There's the Venice episode, which is always my favorite episode anyway, partly because it was set in Venice. That was my favorite location to be on. A lovely hotel, and just a fun show to shoot. And my least favorite location was Southwark Southall Gasworks, a disused gasworks, which in Southall, which was really horrible, and that was my least favorite location in that Saint series.
And Jane, do you have a favorite location you've worked in your career?
California.
Yeah.
I'd like to be paid again to go to California. I'd like to be paid again to go to Hawaii, actually. But it won't happen. I have my memories.
So it doesn't sort of become a bit laborious going from location to location in terms of the travel and maybe the different ways of working.
It's very, very different nowadays.
Yeah. They do look after you, though. I mean, they try to. They do their best to look after you, and they put you in those days. I mean, you went into a nice hotel, for heaven's sake. You couldn't really complain, particularly foreign travel. Particularly if you were in France or Italy, where we were in lovely hotels. I mean, when we were in Florence, we were in the most beautiful hotel I've ever seen in my life. I can't remember the name of it, but everything was marble. It was extraordinary, beautiful hotel. I don't know. I was told once by the production manager, the location manager. He said, "You've got to remember, Ian." He said, "These foreign episodes where we go abroad to France and Italy, 75% of our budget goes on travel and accommodation. 75% of it, only 25% actually goes on the film itself. This is why, on the whole, most television productions didn't do it. One of the reasons why Roger Moore's series never went abroad. He never went abroad at all. And nearly all of his stuff was shot on sound stages or just locally around Elstree. It was the cost of it. And this is one of the reasons why my series was cancelled, was the cost was at that time prohibitive. The rumor is that the Return of the Saint was the most expensive television series ever filmed in the UK up to that point. Everything afterwards was more expensive, but at that time it was the most expensive, mostly because of those foreign locations.
Wow.
I've had a little comment from Denise, who's watching.
Hello, Denise.
She says that she was 16 when she watched Return of the Saint, and that she wasn't looking at the car. So obviously she's a fan of yours. There's this nice moment when you come behind the bad guy with the machine gun. You go in one door, he follows you, and you come out the other. And you put the gun in his back and said, "Are you looking for me?" Denise is wondering if you could do that line now for her. Are you looking for me?
Are you looking for me?
Thank you. Yeah.
All right. Yes, I mean that was, in contrast to the episode we watched a couple of weeks ago, Philip. What was it called? The one we did.
One Black September.
That's right. One Black September. I just thought the script was wittier. I loved Lawrence Naismith's line when I said to you, "Where did you learn to fight like that?" Was it in the military television? That was funny, And I wish we had more of that in the show. This is one of the reasons why John Cruise's scripts were so popular, really, that he was able to do that kind of thing. There wasn't that kind of humor in One Black September at all, was there? No,
there wasn't. That was much more straight, and I think the best episodes of the series, any serious topic, it's nice to have that. You need the humor, don't you? Particularly because this is quite a dark episode. and a timely one as well, and unfortunately still is. But you have that. I think it echoes life, doesn't it? When in the darker moments, that's when you have the comedy, you're making the jokes, and you need to sort of keep going.
But also the saying was, I mean, Roger repeated his saying when he did James Bond, didn't he? His saying was full of little quips. Admittedly, it was written that way, but it suited his style a lot. And I always felt that there should be more of that, more humor, more being relaxed about everything, not so uptight about it all.
So I suppose by definition, if Roger took the Saint into Bond, if you had done Bond, you kind of would have sort of taken the Saint's.
I suppose so. Probably.
I suppose.
Yeah.
So there is quite a bit of weapon uses, as you mentioned, the machine guns. Did you get weapons training? Was that sort of was that fun?
Yeah, yes. I mean, on the whole, they would say, "Here, hold that and pull that, and it'll go off." Don't point it at me. That was the weapons training really in those days. It was fairly minimal. I just recently, a couple of years ago, made a film in England where we had a lot of shooting, and we didn't shoot anything. It was all done later on, put on. It was all CGE shots, So we had to pretend the gun was going off. We had to go, and make the recoil, do it ourselves. Which I think is rather sad nowadays, but there's these safety factors now. But back then, no, you were firing blank bullets out of the Schmeisser, or I don't know what. Somebody will know what those submachine guns were. I have a feeling they were Uzis, maybe, were they? Somebody let me know what they were. I know we shot Uzis at one point, or maybe German ones, I don't know. But yeah, it was lovely. I mean, nothing more fun than shooting off a submachine gun's fabulous. Yeah, I wish we'd had more of that, but we were stopped. But guns were taken out of the equation.
How did you find, Jenny, if you didn't any action scenes in your career in terms of what stunt training you would get, or was it anything like that?
The strange thing was the lack of insurance. I don't know whether you came against that, Ian, but certainly when doing Magpie, for instance, I did a solo parachute jump with the Red Devils, and a man sort of on the landing got between me and the cross and the camera, and I landed near the cross, and the camera didn't get, they thought, the best shot. So the director said, "Well, will you go again?" It's one of those phrases that can actually freeze you solid, especially if they expect you to go up in an aeroplane and leap out of it when you know it's going to land safely.
Yeah.
And insurance, I think nowadays is very, very different, and certainly security is very different. With Softly, when they wanted me to roll on the ground fighting this attacker between the horse's hooves, we did ask whether the horse had been trained, as they are in America, and we were told by the BBC, no, we got it from the farmer next door. And you think, no, then I'm not doing it, because that is silly. But it didn't occur to them that it might be dangerous, because it said in the script, she gets up after beating him, and you think, wait a minute, there's real life in here as well.
Did you find that when you went from production to production that the sort of the safety standards, how the stunts were done, it varied hugely? Was that your impressions?
I mean, if you go on YouTube and type in Lionel Jeffries drowning or something like that, you'll see an extraordinary sequence where Lionel Jeffries and I, in a sitcom series we did called Tom, Dick and Harry, are driving together, and we drive into this lake. And it's quite well known, this episode, where we both nearly drowned. Well, not me so much, because I'd already arranged that I would climb out onto the roof. It was supposed to be a comedy sequence, teaching my father to drive, old Lionel Jeffries. And they told us that the lake was 3 foot deep and the car would just come to a stop and sit on the bottom, and we'd just continue acting. Well, that just wasn't the case at all. The car floated out into the middle of the lake. The lake turned out to be 45 feet deep, and the car started to sink. It's all on film. You can see it. It's an extraordinary sequence. And Lionel Jeffries only just managed to get out through the window. He couldn't open the door. He climbed out through the window. As he climbs out through the window and begins to swim away, the car sinks. And had he been a bigger, fatter man, Lionel would have died. And it was extraordinary. And in fact, that episode changed the whole organization of stunts at Thames Television. After that, they always had a stunt coordinator on anything to do with any kind of action. There was somebody there. But up until that time, no, there was nobody there at all. Just the crew and us. And yeah, and it was extraordinary.
It didn't say in the script that this car sank.
No, it didn't get that far. You see, I mean, he would have cut away, but because the scene was. But when we had lines to do, and we did them, and then we just sat there. And Lionel just by this time I'm up on the roof of the car, and Lionel suddenly I heard him saying, "This is sinking. I'm sinking." And it was like the Titanic. The car started to go like that and started to do this, and he said, "I can't get out." I said, "Okay, Lionel, you have to get out. You have to come out through the window. Come on." By the time I'm in the water, and he came out through the window, but it was close. Yeah. So the whole stunt thing has changed dramatically. They're far more safety conscious these days. Far more.
I think there's been a lot in the news recently about how the stunt industry still has some ways to go in terms of the health and safety elements, because it still seems to vary a bit from whatever production you're on, and some very serious accidents and in some cases fatalities that are happening, fairly recently, because it's not sort of for some reason standardized even to today, but for some reason.
That's right.
Unfortunately, accidents will happen.
Yeah. I think no matter how good a crew is and how production, there's always, that's why obviously they make the big money, isn't it? Because there is always an inherent danger with the stunts. I just wanted to mention at the end of the episode, because it almost sets up almost like begging for a sequel, isn't it? Because the idea is that there's more to be done. I assume that might perhaps have come up if there had been another season.
I would hope so, yes, because I rather like the idea. It was a fun idea, and again, John Cruise he put this in, the idea that this old general and I might team up again and go off and fight crime. That's a lovely thought, yes. And had there been a second series, I would have hoped that John Cruise would have submitted a script which included Lawrence Naismith's character again, and Jenny's character too. By the way,
I was going to say, I wanted to see how far we could go. Yes, absolutely.
Because Jenny, you retired from acting, I believe, fairly shortly after this episode.
No, I never retired. I mean, 3 years ago, I was treading the boards again. I went into Magpie, but I still act.
Yeah. So at this point, you went more into presenting and then a theatre rather than say necessarily film. And so was it a conscious thing, or was it just kind of the way your career sort of turned?
It was semi-conscious. In the 60s, ladies were dropping clothes like autumn leaves, and I didn't want to. And now that I'm the mother of 2 sons, I'm very glad I didn't. What with the internet, which nobody knew was going to come, but no, it was not a conscious decision as such. But the Magpie audition came up. I got the job. I've always been a bit of a tomboy, and it was huge fun. And then other presenting jobs came up, which I took. But no, I'm still acting if asked.
I suppose an actor never retires, do they? They keep, it's as long as the phone rings, you turn up, sort of thing.
Yeah, I think as long as you've got your memory.
Yeah. No, there's no reason for us to retire at all, I don't think. And also, I mean, it's lovely. That job, Jenny, that Magpie job must have been such fun. Absolutely lovely. I mean, every week you're doing something different. Every week you're having some new experience. I can't think of anything nicer. I'm terribly jealous, really. I'd love to have done one of those presenting things where, particularly for that kind of age level, where it's all, you have to make it amusing and fun. Otherwise it doesn't work,
No, absolutely. You'd have loved it and you'd have been brilliant at it. It was subliminal education, I think. But for us, it was huge fun, as you say. We got to do things that you couldn't pay to do. If we went to a museum, we got to step over that rope. We got to hold the things that nobody's allowed to hold. We got to meet the most extraordinary people, and we got pushed out of airplanes. So, swings and roundabouts.
Yes, that's the thing. That's the reason why those jobs are so lovely. I mean,
Yeah.
first of all, not repetitive, and secondly, as Jenny said, you're doing stuff that most of the time you don't do.
No.
So with Magpie, you learned to do a whole number of skills and things that you wouldn't have had otherwise. Ian, did you ever have to learn something for film or TV role, horse riding, or something that you carried on later, throughout your life, perhaps in your personal?
I'm trying to think. Well, on the Saint, I learned scuba diving. What else did I learn on the Saint?
You did a parachute jump.
I did with the Red Devils. The same thing with you. I did Colin Baker. I was at a party with Colin Baker. I think it was with Simon Lucy Williams. And Colin said, "Oh, do you know what I'm doing on Monday? I'm doing a parachute jump for charity." And he looked at me. He said, "You should come too." And I heard myself say, "Oh, all right." So that's what we did. But we did it with the same team as you did it, with the day training beforehand, and then you
No,
jump
I
out.
did 3 days training and jumped by myself.
Okay, no, I mean I did the jump on my own, yes, but
After 1 day.
well, yeah, I mean we had a day of training and then they took us up, yeah. But then again, this wasn't for a presentation show. This was just a couple of stupid actors jumping out of a plane and supposedly earning a bit of money for charity.
Gosh.
Yeah. But the
Well
same team, I
done.
bet it was the same instructor and everything that you have.
I would think so. It's that wonderful form you have to sign where it says, "Do you have a mental problem?" And you think, yeah,
Yeah,
the plane is going to land safely.
Yeah. No, I'm trying to think what else I might have learned as a filmmaking, because most of the stuff I did, I already knew how to do, which is always, I say to young actors, do try and learn as many skills as possible. Be able to ride a horse, be able to ride a motorcycle, certainly be able to drive a car. All those kinds of skills, I think, are useful for a young actor. So,
did you do judo?
I did a little bit. Yes, I did when I was a kid. But again, the style of fighting we did was odd. I think it was made up by Les Crawford, the stuntman. I think he created it to make it look good on television. So I learned that. And what else? Nothing really. No.
Well, one person I didn't mention, Jonathan Byrne, who plays the son of the drug dealer's son. And of course, we know he was the one that contaminated the drugs in the first place. Do you have a lasting memory of Jonathan, Ian, or an opinion of his performance?
I think he was very good. I don't remember anything amusing. Again, actors are inclined to remember amusing things, either amusing or disastrous things that happen.
Yeah.
And it's the nature of a show like that amusing and disastrous things aren't supposed to happen. So I just remember that again, Jonathan was very nice and lovely, and again, when you look at the episode, I don't have a huge amount to do with him. Most of my stuff is either with Gregoire Aslan or with Lawrence Naismith in that episode. So but again, it was ships passing in the night. It's hard to remember that long ago.
Oh yeah. You both done a number of horror films in your time. Do you have a particular favorite horror film?
Jenny, you go first because I've done this. I've answered this question in previous episodes of this. Go on.
Favorite horror film? Gosh. Oh, what's the one where you look in the TV and it goes and then things come? Pardon?
Twilight Zone? No.
Yes, maybe. No, it's not Twilight.
No, the one you were in. He wants to know our favorite horror movie you were in, Jenny.
I was in.
Yes.
I've done The Scars of Dracula, which had the most wonderful cast, with Christopher Lee, obviously, as Dracula, Patrick Troughton as the slave, if you will, sort of butler type personage, Dennis Waterman as my boyfriend. everybody in it was just marvelous. And again, I mean, it's a 3-week turnaround. You don't mess about with a Hammer horror. You say hello to everybody, you get down to it, and 3 weeks later you've finished. So half the set from the film that was filmed before is rejigged and left where it is and added to for the next film. And what else did I do? Oh, and I did forgotten the name of it because I hated it so much. No, what really made me cross was that I felt let down by the director, because I said that I'm not prepared, as I've said before, to do nude or semi-nude scenes. And he then put in what was meant to be my bust and my pubes. And Equity was brilliant and stood by me, and we were about to go to court for defamation of character. Not because I didn't have a good bust, but because of the other bit, because I'm a natural blonde and she wasn't. And that was Equity's suggestion. Brilliant. I would never have come up with that suggestion. So those had to be taken out. Well, sorry, that clip had to be taken out. But no, it was, I don't know. The Flesh and Blood Show. I finally found the name of it. So no, I only did those two, but it was the time when girls would rip their bras off and leap around with no clothes on for no apparent reason. It wasn't even a warm summer.
If you'd done those same films for Amicus, which was the rival company to Hammer at that time, you wouldn't have ever taken anything off at all, Jenny. That was I never did a Hammer film, but I did one or two Amicus things, and one of the policies at Amicus was absolutely no nudity whatsoever. So you'd have been happier over at Amicus, frankly.
Why did my agent not send me over there? Mind you, I didn't have to do anything for Hammer.
No,
other people did.
Right.
Yeah, other people did, but my character didn't have to.
Okay, well that's good. Yeah.
And would you both consider the horror genre to be something that you enjoy being a part of? Because I know some people can be quite dismissive of horror as being a bit sensations and more sort of voyeuristic. Is it something that you both were happy to sort of be in?
I didn't particularly like. Go on, Jane.
What was the question?
Oh, I was just saying what you thought of the horror genre in general, whether you liked being a part of. Yeah.
I landed in the horror genre because of my friend Mike Reeves. My first film was Revenge of the Blood Beasts, which thank goodness nobody ever watches anymore because it's the worst film ever made. And then I went on to do The Sorcerers with Boris Karloff. I think I'm one of the very few actors left alive who worked with Boris Karloff.
Wow.
And then the last one, which was my favorite, is the very well-known and iconic movie Witchfinder General. But in terms of the genre, no, I didn't particularly enjoy doing horror movies. I don't like looking frightened. I don't like acting scared. I don't really like all that. I'm more of the kind of actor who stands with a martini in one hand and a cigarette in the other, with one elbow up on the mantelpiece, saying witty things. That's what my role was best at. That's why The Saint was quite fun for me to do, really. But I never liked the horror films particularly. But I did my fair share of them, that's for sure. Yeah.
But they're like pantomime, aren't they, Ian?
I suppose so. I always thought the face you make when you're frightened or terrified out of your wits is an awful face. And also I thought it's a silly looking face. I never like making that face. It's that silly, describing acting in such simplistic terms, but I never liked making the face of, oh, I'm terrified of you. Didn't like doing that at all.
I suppose there's nothing scary about being in a horror film because you can see all how the prosthetics are done, and it's not shocking. It's quite laughable.
Indeed, It's not scary when you're there. Yeah, of course. So it is really, it's a performance, of course, and also some of it's just laughable, really.
What's really scary is if you are laughing because one man has his hand up a plastic bat and the other man is sort of, wrapped around this guy trying to make the wings flap, and you're giggling, and Christopher Lee comes in and says, You're meant to take this seriously. It's a true story of Vlad the Impaler. And you think,
Yes.
I take it Boris Karloff didn't disappoint, Ian.
Boris was lovely. He was very old and not very well, but he was game for anything. He was a sweet, dear old chap. He at one point he and I were waiting to make an entrance. We were going to be queued to make our entrance at a certain point. And we sat there and we sat there and we sat there. And the queue never came, and we went on Saturday. And he just turned to me. He said, "I should probably be dead by the time they queue us in for this." He was a very sweet man, yes, lovely man, and as I say, game for anything really. I probably am one of the very few actors left alive who did it. I was very young when I worked with him, but it was cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
Called The Sorcerers, guys. Go and look it up. It's a fun movie.
And I take it, Jenny, Christopher Lee didn't disappoint either.
we actually, before I say anything else, we did end up firm friends, but it was a bit of a bumpy ride. His dressing room was next to mine, and he could sing opera beautifully in 4 languages. He made films, I think, in 3 languages. Very erudite man, but his singing of opera in his dressing room just got me down. So I had I'm sorry, but I had
get
the
anybody
temerity.
down. Yes. Yeah.
I was trying to learn my script in my defense. So I knocked on his door and I said, "Do you know any Gilbert and Sullivan?" And I thought, that'll keep him quiet for a while. No, he knew every bloody Gilbert and Sullivan operetta that there was going. And he started with my pet hate one, which was the really serious one based in the Tower of London and everything.
The Yeoman of the Guard.
He took it really seriously, this being Dracula. He didn't mess about. I mean, this was an autobiography. Sorry, I've gone.
Just having a look at some audience questions. Stephen wanted to know about your relationship, Ian, with the costumer Eileen Sullivan. What your relationship was like with her?
Lovely. I mean, the word came down from on high, from the producers of the kind of look they wanted. So Eileen didn't have a tremendous amount of input other than taking me off and getting me fitted for these things. We had a relationship with a shop in Jermyn Street, very hip, modern, all latest sort of hip clothes. I've discussed this before of how I hated the clothes. One of the reasons why I quite like this episode is that the clothes are actually not too bad. I quite like that tan jacket and the open neck shirt. We should have had a lot more of that. Simply, as opposed to looking sort of so sleek and model-like. I looked like a male model half the time in this show. But in this episode, I thought not so much. It was better. But she was very good at her job, Eileen, obviously. But she wasn't permitted to be all that creative, really.
And I believe you kept quite a few of your outfits. Do you regret eventually getting rid of them?
Well, they fell apart, I suppose.
Just fell apart, yeah.
I kept one or two things, but most of them I didn't really like. Most of them also, and Jenny will know about this, most of them were so of their period or so of their time that they were dated within 6 months or a year of me wearing them. So in a way, the show now looks such a period piece because of the clothes, not so much the girls' clothes. Jenny, I thought you looked lovely in it, but the men's
they were my clothes.
Were they really? They may well have been. Yes. But and in fact, at one point, the word came down from Lou Grade, who saw an episode or two. He said, "I don't like the guy's clothes. Just get him some plain suits." And after that, I felt much better about it because it's just plain suits. What Roger wore was a plain suit or a plain jacket. But I had all these trendy things and flares, those dreadful flares on my pants and on my trousers. Yeah.
And Jenny, I was wondering, you worked with Walter Gotell. I think it was in Softly Softly. Do you remember Walter at all?
Yes, I do. Huge, tall chap who he played. He was a very high up policeman I remember in one episode. Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah, I didn't really have much to do with him because he was too high up the chain of the police for me to have anything to do with.
Right. Yeah.
He's one of those actors who is in everything, you know. Oh, look at him again. Yeah, they
He
cropped up in it.
was.
And of course, as a Bond fan, he's played basically General Gogo in a number of the films, very much sort of showing that the Russian relationship with America at that time. And I know if you watch the Pointless game show in the UK, and they ever have a Bond question as to actors, Walter's always a pointless answer. So if you remember Walter, you'll
Oh,
win the
right.
jackpot.
Good clue.
Always a pointless answer, that one. So
We
just
used to call him Walt Gottel.
oh,
Walt Gottel. That's good. Gottel you.
and was there a particular reason why you did that, or was it just
No, because
affection?
he used to actually, this is telling tales. He was naughty, and sometimes if you were seated, for instance, and his character was meant to come and talk to you, he would always come too close to you so that your position to be filmed was like that. So we would say he's done a Walt Gottel.
Right.
Right.
And just to start to wrap up, you said, Ian, that you think it's one of the better episodes. I think that you did. Jenny, would you agree that you think it holds up very, very nicely?
Oh, I loved it. I loved it. And I know Ian wasn't comfortable in all the clothes, but I truly felt that it was a wonderful step beyond The Saint. The Return of the Saint, I thought, was fun. It was new, it was fresh, and it was young. For some reason, I thought that Roger Moore's Saint was older, was more institutionalized, if you will. So I liked Ian's Saint. He was cheekier, he was naughtier, and he was fashionable.
Yeah, there is certainly a rebellious quality to I think to Ian's Saint particularly. Was that something that you were conscious of, Ian, sort of playing it a bit sort of anti or authoritarian?
Well, I mean, we have to remember that Roger's Saint was in the 60s and mine was in the late 70s. There was a very long gap between the end of Roger Moore's series and the beginning of mine. A lot of people say, what was it like to step into his shoes? Well, the shoes were kind of old by the time I stepped into them. You know, a long gap. What was the question?
Oh, it's just to say about being a bit sort of anti-establishment in this.
Oh, I see. Yes.
Roger.
Well, I always thought Roger. You know, Roger always used to tease himself more than anybody would ever tease him, saying that really he had only two performances. One was the eyebrow up, and one was the eyebrow down. And so Roger did a lot of that. I think Roger had quite a lot of sort of cheerful little light-hearted things all the way through his show. But again, I don't really remember it. And I quite consciously tried not to watch any, but they weren't that easy to watch in those days. But what I'm saying is that you couldn't watch an old show with very easily. Now, of course, you can have so many reference points, you can go off and watch anything. But back then, around about 1978, to watch an old Saint show from the 60s wasn't that easy to come by, you know, wasn't easy to find. But I remembered watching them, and I also realized that the Saint is what you make of him. It's not something that you fall into a character. It is you. You just play yourself, enhanced, you know, enhanced. You can able to run faster, drive better, speak more wittily, think faster. That's it. But it's still just you know.
And don't close your eyes when you shoot a gun.
Yes, don't close your eyes when you shoot a gun. Yeah.
And Roger does that actually when he even in his gun barrel for Bond. If you look closely, he blinks when he fires the gun in the gun barrel.
Every time.
And that's in they use the same one for 4 of his films, no 5, and it's unfortunately he always said he used to blink when a gun went off. And if you watch, you do see him do that. Jenny, of course, you worked with Roger on the Persuaders. As we're talking about Roger, do you have a memory or two you want to share?
Yeah, I walked in one scene. I walked into the room. Tony Curtis I didn't know at the time, came up behind me and sniffed my hair. Goodness only knows why. And I walked straight into Roger Moore and gave him a kiss. And I got paid for it. Not a bad day's work.
No, not at all. The last audience question I have is just about the future of the Saint. This is from Stephen. There is rumors that there's going to be a new Saint movie, directed by Doug Lyman, who did the Bourne Identity. Do you think there's a place for the Saints in present day?
Well, you know, they keep trying that. They keep saying, "Oh, there's going to be a new Saint," and indeed, I was in the new Saint with Adam Rayner, who I thought was a fabulous Saint. I played the villain in it, you know, and Roger was in it as well. One of the last things Roger ever did, Roger and I and Adam Rayner. They keep trying to do it, and finally, they actually managed it with Adam Rayner. But it was supposed to be a series, but it never went anywhere. I just feel that maybe the character is a little anachronistic these days. I mean, you could argue that James Bond, frankly, is of his period and kind of old-fashioned. The Saint is much more so, really. I mean, you know, he's never explained where he gets his money from and who he is and what his background is or anything. And I just think it's a hard sell these days. You know, the original idea, Bob Baker, who produced the show, both Rogers and mine, Bob Baker at one point was thinking of actually putting it back into its period, the right period, which would have been the 1930s, and making my character back in the 1930s the same. But then he realized that the cost of it was far too difficult, and also it was hard for young people to identify with a character who was dressed and looked like somebody from the 1930s. So he dropped that idea, but that was an idea of his to do it like that.
Yeah. And Jenny, would you agree with Ian's comments?
Yeah, absolutely. If Ian does it, I want to do it with Ian.
Yeah.
If you'll pardon the phrase.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I think it's possible, but as I say, I've heard so many. Oh, there's going to be a new Saint. There's going to be a new Saint. There was one after me. Simon Dutton did a series after me. People have tried to lift it up out of obscurity many times. I just think that it's probably not going to happen.
I think with Bourne now, you can't compare the two at all. You can't compare the new heroes with the old ones.
No.
Well, I think the Val Kilmer film was quite successful in that it gave Simon Temple a bit of a backstory, which we hadn't had before. So, but of course, that didn't lead anywhere. It seems to be sort of quite difficult to. Everyone wants to think, oh, well, we'll make a film about Charlie's Angels or whatever it might be, and they don't seem to sort of connect for some reason.
No, I mean, I think the closest they got to it, and the closest they would get to it, would be with Adam Rayner, who was terrific. Also, they introduced the fact that he has a girlfriend, a permanent girlfriend, which again is correct according to the books. The Saint had a girlfriend called Patricia Home, who was always very helpful, and he indeed had a Patricia Home in that show that they shot. But I think that's the closest they got to it, was with Adam. I'm sorry it didn't work, because I would have thought he would have made a great Saint. Really good, very modern, very up to date, cool. Yeah.
And my the pilot is on Netflix now, I believe. I don't think it still is, but it was for a while.
It was, yeah.
Yeah. Did you see it, Jenny? Did you see the?
No.
Yeah. It felt like it was a bit stretched but I think it was probably because it never went anywhere. It was kind of decided then to release it as a TV movie, putting together things that normally would have been cut out of it. So I think if you look at it from that point of view, I think it does stand up. My final question to you both was, because you both come from, you have parents who were in the profession. Was that a driving force in you both wanting to become actors? No,
not me.
Your turn, Jenny.
No, I trained as a nanny and a governess, and I wanted very much to do that rather than have anybody look at me. I was amazingly shy, and my brother was the one with he was just, he was 6'4" at 14, blonde, big blue eyes, and he had charisma. I thought he'll go and do it, but he got a proper job. So I sort of fell into it. It doesn't help you if your parents are successful actors, in my opinion. The only step forward you have is that they might remember your name more than somebody else. But they could also, which can destroy you, compare you to your parents' performances. And of course, they have experience and you haven't.
Mm.
My parents were not successful, unlike Jenny's parents. My parents were not successful actors. My father did it for about a year after university, and then he discovered he hated actors and poverty almost equally, so he stopped and became an advertising man. And my mother did it when she was very, very young. She went to RADA. She went straight into the profession. She did it for a while, didn't really get anywhere, and decided not to do it anymore. But when my sister and I were adults, and she was doing a lot of amateur acting, and we said to her, "Why don't you go back and try again?" And she did. She became a professional actress late in life, but she never did television or anything like that. She did repertory theatres up and down the country. She was a mainstay character actress in some repertory companies like Harrogate Rep and York and Cheltenham, places like that. And she had a wonderful time doing it, and but she wasn't successful, nor was my father. So I, unlike Jenny, yes, I was rather inspired by my parents. And when we were children, my sister and I were always putting on plays. My mother was putting on plays with us. So yes, I think probably did come from certainly my mother, not so much from my father, but certainly from my mother. But as I say, I didn't have the discipline. I think Jenny's absolutely right. If you're the child of successful actors, it is an incredibly hard thing to go into the profession. People think you've got an open door. You don't. You have a lot of closed doors, in fact, and the comparisons are horrible. Really, I didn't have to worry about any of that. But so yes, I think certainly I did go into the profession partly because of my mum. Yeah.
What did your father think, though? Did he think it was a proper profession for a man?
If you were going to succeed in it, yes, it was fine. I mean, I don't think he had. I mean, as I say, he did it extensively at Cambridge. He was one of the leading lights of the Footlights, which is the famous Cambridge Amateur Dramatic Society of the Footlights of Cambridge. And I've got programs of his. And in fact, even when he went to India to be an oil salesman for a while when he was very young, he did a couple of amateur shows. I have a wonderful program of him in a play. Very famous play that now escapes me. Can't remember its name, doesn't matter. So he did it for a little bit amateurishly, but then stopped altogether. No, I don't think he had any contempt for the profession. I think he'd love to have done it. But he always said he said his problem as an actor was nobody could ever hear a word he said. So it's not good in the theatre, is it really? If you can't be heard. No, I think he was very encouraging. I mean, he paid for me to go to drama school and everything. He was still alive there. He died shortly after, and all that. He was supportive. It's just that he, wasn't one himself.
Mm.
And were your parents supportive, Jenny, in your in going into the business?
My father was amazed. My mother was absolutely nonplussed. But in all truth, the reason I went into modeling first is because my mother was going through a very difficult divorce and we needed the money. And I was offered jobs, so I did it. And from modeling, was offered acting jobs and learnt while being paid, which was, I think in the 60s that happened to quite a few of us who didn't go to RADA or Lambda or any of the acting schools that were there. My mother and father went to the acting schools and they badly wanted to be actors. I didn't at all, but I'm glad I did.
Yes, so are we, darling, so are we.
Thank you, sweetheart, thank you.
And of course, you both have a huge fan following for Bond, Return of the Saint, and other things. Do you enjoy meeting the fans at events, and are you sometimes struck by how important these shows, these productions are, the influence it has on people in their lives?
Yes, I mean they're all very nice and lovely people, and one sometimes wonder why they like you so much, but they do, you know, and long may they live. Yeah. And in fact, there's a whole bunch of them on now. And I want to say hi. Hello, everybody.
And it's the same with you, Jenny. You sort of like that interaction and the stories that people might come up and
Yeah, I mean, as Ian says, it's a constant surprise and an absolute joy, and I mean, I'm very grateful because without them, I wouldn't earn a living, and in all truth, without them, I wouldn't remember half of the stuff I've done.
it keeps it all fresh, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Also, they make you, I've always felt a little bit that acting, in terms of it being a way of earning a living, is rather a juvenile, rather pointless, slightly silly way of making a living and living a life. And fans are the ones who say to you, no, it's not. Because, you know, for some reason, whatever it is, you've given us pleasure. You maybe have improved the quality of our lives in some minor, tiny little way. And in that sense, your fans are actually very helpful to you, just to remind you that what you do is not entirely without value. Obviously, it's better to be a doctor or a nurse or a school teacher, or, you know, but the profession does have some value, I guess, you know, and you're reminded of it by the people who like you.
Well, I think we learned it during lockdown, didn't we? Sort of how when we were missing that culture and how it affected our lives, and I think music and theatre and film and TV, it's our soul, isn't it? It's sort of what makes things, a lot of other things as well, but it sort of it brings joy and laughter and fun, and I think when people have sort of going through bad times, they might come on, they might pick up an episode of Return of the Saint, and suddenly their problems seem less bad for 50 minutes, or they watch a Bond film, and so I think it's quite essential. You know, it gives meaning to I think a lot of people, and it helps people through things. So just before we go, is there any final comments you have about this episode of the Return of the Saint before we go?
I just want to say, I think we're a bit tough on the Chinese at the end, aren't we? Always making it's rather slightly racist, all that, isn't it? The Chinese are going to be bringing the drugs in. I look at that now and I think, okay, maybe we wouldn't write that in a modern episode. But other than that, I looked on it, and whereas I looked on One Black September with a certain amount of horror last week or the week before for it, I have to say this one, I thought, no, this one's actually quite fun, and I quite like it. You know, so it's not all horror show for me at all. You know. Jenny, how do you feel?
Yeah.
I was very, very proud to be a part of it, and to have your help as well, Ian. I mean, I'd done a couple of years of Magpie already, and to be allowed to do a drama on television while being a presenter was a huge joy and a huge surprise, because normally they didn't do that. So I was very happy indeed and loved it.
And it's a wonderful episode. I think it's a real fan favorite, and it holds up excellently. And thank you very much for joining us to talk about it. It's been wonderful.
Thanks,
Philip. Thank you. And
Thank
Jenny,
you,
darling, lovely seeing you again. I hope to catch up with you when I'm next in England.
Yes,
all right?
that would be wonderful. That would be wonderful, both of you. God bless.
Bye.
Take care, guys. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye, guys.